This is Ringside Radio, your ringside ticket to some of the finest wrestling talk around. And now, here are your hosts, Grimm Chorizo, Katrina and the Sloppy Joe!
Hello everybody, this is Ringside Radio, Grimm Chorizo here, joined with Katrina and Sloppy Joe. We've got a special guest with us here tonight. Welcome back, Frank the Tank.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So, recently, our own Katrina went down to Florida.
Yes,
and
I did. I go on record saying that it is on par with my WrestleMania experience. Like, actually going to see WrestleMania and everything that goes with that. Just because it's something I've never done, and I have so much love and respect for NXT and everybody who's a part of it.
So you've been to a lot of wrestling shows, and this was a completely different experience. Completely new people, basically all people you've never seen before, or if you had, they were not under these characters.
Right.
You know. So what was it like to go to brand new? Did it feel like you were going to a new indie show or something that you had never been to?
Kind of, yeah, because, like, I'm going into a thinking WWE show because I know how WWE runs house shows. I know about what time to get there and usually get an idea of where to go to try to meet people. So we got there early, and it was a small venue. It was a National Guard Armory, actually, is what it was. And it was small, and I wasn't quite sure where they'd be coming in, but just kind of scoped it out a little bit, and then got some lunch, went and kind of hung around the city for a little bit. It was like every time we came back, nobody was there. There was no truck. There was nobody around. So it was kind of weird, and finally I ended up actually knocking on the door of the armory. Like, there's a doorbell you can ring, and this, like, big old army dude in, like fatigues answers the door, and I'm like...
What do you want?
Yeah, it was kind of scary. I'm like...
There's no wrestling here.
I just need to know if there's a wrestling show today. He said, yeah, there's a show. They should be here before too much longer. So I'm like, oh, okay. Finally, about 3:30, I start seeing, like, cars showing up and stuff. So I'm like, okay, so I get out and kind of, like, plant myself by what I perceive to be the front door. And they just kind of all started showing up. So it was overwhelming, to say the least.
So did they all kind of show up about the same time, or how did that go?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I would say within probably a 30 to 45 minute time span, they were probably pretty much all there. So, like, there's, like, 4 of them coming at me at once, and then there's 2 more coming across the road, and I'm just, like, trying not to die because it was very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I was going to ask, at, like, WWE house shows or anything, they usually park in a specific area where they go into the building then, but this, were they just kind of parking in, like, a parking lot?
Yeah,
or?
they were like just like the fans. They would park in the lot, walk across the street with all their stuff. They'd have to, like, ring the little doorbell, and the people would have to let them in.
I'm imagining, like, Connor and Victor, like,
yeah,
no.
Yeah.
The Ascension's here, can we come in?
But it's interesting because it just illustrated to me how very different NXT runs from WWE, because this is what happened, and I didn't have a clue this is how it was. I guess I could have assumed, but what they did was they were showing up to set up the ring. So they got there, rang the doorbell, don't forget that part, went in, set up the ring, and all the barricades and all that stuff, did the show. After the show, they had to tear down. They had to break down the ring, load everything back in the truck, which finally did show up, by the way, and then get their stuff, and then get in their cars and go home. So they are actually doing all the footwork and all the heavy lifting. So, and I guess that makes sense. It's part of the, quote, paying your dues,
yeah, that's true.
I guess, that they talk about.
So they get there, and did you have any luck meeting any of the wrestlers?
Yeah, I did. Like I said, it was so overwhelming because they're all coming, like, 3, 4, 5 at a time. The first carload, there were 4 of them. I only recognized one, and that was Simon Gotch.
Oh, okay.
And he was a lot to handle. He was a really nice guy, but just totally in character.
So was he looking quite manly?
He was looking quite manly, yes. I try really hard. I get excited, but I try really hard to remain calm when I'm meeting them, calm and respectful, and polite. And this was just my first, like, burst of excitement and energy, and I just, it's so stupid. I literally just blurted out, "Can I have a picture?"
Like right away.
Which no hello, no oh my gosh, Simon Gotch, I just like flew out of my face. And Simon stops, and he just like looked at me like in like false astonishment, and he was like, "Why, yes, there are many pictures. I'm sure you could have one of them." And I literally like slapped myself in the face. Like, I see it as kind of like slapping the rudeness off or something of myself, of my outburst. And I go, "I'm sorry. I meant, could I please take a picture with you?" And he's like, "Oh, with me? Very well then." And he came over, and I like whispered to Simon, I'm like, "I don't know who those guys are, and I feel really bad." And he looks at them, and he looks over at me, and you can just like, if you know his character, you can just picture like his facial expressions and stuff. He looks at them, looks back at me, and goes, "Oh, you don't know who Solomon Crow is?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like jumping up and down. I like almost grabbed his arm like in excitement and like stopped myself. So there's this like claw hanging in midair. And then I like put my arm back to my side and I'm like, "That's Solomon Crow." And he looked back over at the group. They're almost to the door by now. Looked back at me and goes, "Yes, that is Solomon Crow, and now he hates you." But he said, "Yeah, now he hates you because you don't recognize him, or you didn't recognize him." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I'm like, "Solomon Crow," and I said it like so like wimpy, and like he didn't even hear it all. And I like desperately look at Simon, and I'm like, "Will you help me? Will you help me call him over?" And he looks over again and goes, "I don't want him over here. He hates you. You didn't recognize him." Wow. And I was like, "Ugh." So I let out this like big dramatic sigh, and I cup my hands over my mouth, and Simon's like shielding himself because he knows what's coming. And I go, "Solomon Crow, can I please take a picture with you?" And you see he's almost like, it's about time, like he was just like waiting for it.
Yeah.
So we took a picture, and I was like, "I saw you wrestle once in Chicago." And he was like, "Oh yeah?" He's like looking at me all, puzzled. And I said, "Yeah, because you used to be Sami Callihan, right?" And he's like looking at me all like innocently, and he goes, "Maybe." And I was like, "Yeah, I saw you wrestle there." I said, "But I didn't get to meet you, so I'm excited I get to meet you now." So we took a picture. I took a picture with him, and Simon Gotch photobombed. It's actually pretty funny. And then after that, Simon's just standing there with his arms crossed. And I go, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'm like, "We should do our picture now, huh?" And he just waves his arm and gestures and goes, "Oh, it's okay. You were just distracted." And so we took our picture, and
he knows you well already.
Oh my gosh, it was funny. It was like he already knew me, sort of.
Well, it sounds like that would probably be a good first person to just kind of like,
yeah, it was.
I don't know, maybe knock off the nervous jitters.
Yeah, it was perfect because I really
people.
felt comfortable. I felt like it was a really positive experience, and I had a lot of fun. Yes.
So who are some of the other cool people that you saw outside before?
Well, most of them that I recognized and called over did actually stop. And I know, like, now that I think about it, it's like, man, they were coming and, like, they needed to, like, get to work. So it was really nice of them to actually take the time. I got JoJo and Alexa Bliss. They came in together, and they both stopped and were really nice, took pictures. And then Alexa kind of encouraged me to tweet the picture to her of the two of us, which I ended up doing later that afternoon. Bailey and Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks and Carmella all came out of the same car. And it was like all four of them are going by at once, so I really could only get one, so I went for Bailey. So I just said, "Hey, Bailey," and she said hi, and, I asked, "Do you mind if we take a picture?" And she like hesitated, and she's like, "I'm really sorry, I gotta get inside." She said, I'll come back later. I was like, "Okay, cool." And just from past experience, usually that's the last you see or hear from them.
Yeah.
But about 5 minutes later, sure enough, 5 minutes later, she came out. She said, "Sorry, I just had to change." So, yeah, we took a picture, and I thought that was really nice of her. And Tyler Breeze came through, and I was super excited. Like, I saw him, and I'm just like, ah! So I said, "Do you mind stopping for a picture?" And he said, "Oh, no, not at all." And
of course not.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny because Schlappy later said, "Oh, I'm surprised you didn't take a selfie." And I said, well, my camera doesn't have, or my phone doesn't have selfie mode, so it would have been on my camera. And I was, like, shaking too bad. I would have either A, looked like an idiot, B, ruined the picture, or both. So I just had Nick take the picture. But he was cool and was very surprised that I was from Illinois. So he said, well, I really hope you enjoy the show. I'm glad you're here. Connor and Victor arrived separately and both on their own, which was interesting. I couldn't believe how nice Connor was. Before and after the show, he was just super cool. And, he was, acting all, scary and then he was like, oh, I'm just messing with you. And he just smiled a lot. He introduced himself by name, like I don't know who you are. He's like, I'm Connor. It's nice to meet you.
Well, duh.
Yeah, you're
asked
only
me my
the
name.
Tag team champion.
Yeah, I know, right? But he was just very, very humble.
Yeah.
But he asked me my name, shook Nick's hand, asked his name. And I told him that we were from Illinois and that this was my first show, and I was very, very happy to be here. And he just, expressed his appreciation. I told him that we had one more show the next night we were going to be at. And he looked legitimately sorry and said, Victor and I aren't going to be there tomorrow. He said, I'm really sorry. And I'm like, it's okay, dude, And I was disappointed because they're, some of my favorites. And Victor was, you could tell he was, really in a hurry, but he did stop and he did take a picture with me and, said, I hope you enjoy the show. Big Cass and Enzo came through, and Aiden English. I think they were all three together, which is a really strange combination. But
I just imagine Aiden sings all the way in the car
and
to all the...
Enzo and Cass were probably yelling.
That's probably very inaccurate because why would he do that? But
yeah,
I just like to imagine that he sings everywhere he's going, driving down the highway. I was like, shut up! You soft!
I see Aiden and I'm barely containing myself because he's like my favorite pretty much, except for Sammy. And I've liked him forever, and he was one that was like, okay, I have to meet him before the weekend's out. I have to. And so I see him while I'm carrying his stuff, and I'm like, sorry, Enzo and Cass, I don't care if I don't get you all this time. I gotta get this guy. And so I said, just like the other ones, hey, Aiden, you mind if we take a picture? And he just he hesitated, and he was like, after the show, is that okay? And I was like, okay. And I'm shattered on the inside, but I'm like, it's gonna be all right. I'm gonna meet him after the show. And he walks a couple more paces and then stops and looks at me and he goes, is that okay? So are you gonna be around after the show? And I was like, yeah, I'll be here. And he goes, okay, I'll see you out here after the show then. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm like, I have a date with Aiden English. I think that's official.
It's official.
I think that's official. So there was that, and then Enzo and Cass was just kind of doo-dee-doo-dee-doo, and I was like, hi, guys. They're like, what's up? So that was interesting.
Seems like a good talk.
Yeah, good talk. Sami Zayn and Adrian Neville came at the same time, and I was dying on the inside seeing them both come across the street because I'm like, if I have to pick one, I'm picking Sami.
Yeah.
But they did Adrian kind of stopped when I stopped Sami. I think he was kind of knew it was coming. The obligatory, I'm the champion and I should stop for a picture with the fan. Like I said before, it was kind of surprising how shy Sami Zayn was. He was very kind, he was very humble, but he was like, oh my gosh. Because I told him that he was my favorite, and he actually literally covered his face and was like, oh, thanks. And then after the show, he signed I had an I Love Sami Zayn sign, and I had a plethora of Sharpies for him to choose from. And he said, where do you want me to sign? I said, oh, you can pick. And he goes, I'll sign in the heart. And I'm sorry, I'm a girl, and I thought that was adorable. So, it was just funny how shy he was. Adrian was incredibly gentlemanly every time I saw him over the weekend. He called me ma'am. After the second show, I know I'm skipping way ahead, but after the second show, he remembered that I was from Illinois from the first night, even though I never mentioned it nor brought my sign at the second show. he had made that connection, like recognized my face, remembered I was there the night before, and remembered that I was from Illinois because he wished me safe travels back to Illinois. Him and Sammy had the main event both nights, and at the end of night 2, I was like really devastated that it was done. You know, I really am grateful I got to go, but like just knowing that I wasn't going to be back and how much fun I'd had, it was just kind of devastating that it was done.
I can understand.
I was like crying and stuff, but I was trying not to be like everybody pay attention to me, but like Adrian noticed, and he came up and shook my hand, and I said, this has been one of the best experiences of my life. And he backed up and got down on one knee in the aisle and like put his hands together and said, thank you for coming. And then stood back up, and I just kind of like blew him a kiss. And it was just, and he went backstage, and Nick, my best friend who was with me, is not a wrestling fan, and he saw it happen and said, that was really awesome.
Yeah.
I noticed scrolling through Instagram that there may have been a little picture of you and Bailey from Bailey's Instagram.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, why don't we hear about that?
I definitely cried about that. I cried a lot that weekend for all kinds of different reasons. All of it involved NXT, though. But, yeah, Bailey was, like I said, her, Enzo, and Colin Cassidy, were doing the meet and greet. And they were just like, you get in there and you find your seat, and then they get on the mic and they're like, okay, NXT fans, it's time for your meet and greet. And I'm, like, looking around. And they're like, today we have Bailey and Enzo Amore and Colin Cassidy. And I'm still looking around like, I don't understand. This is the best day of my life. And they just do. They go over and sit at this table with an NXT backdrop. And I'm still like, what do I do? There's people like getting in line. And I like turn to someone and I'm like, I'm sorry for being so stupid, but do you have to be special to do the meet and greet? And they're like, no, you just go over there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, grab my sign, grab my camera, grab my Sharpies, grabbing Nick. I'm like, let's go.
This is my dream.
I get to take pictures and get, and I'm like, I don't need the autograph in that because I have my sign. But, I took it over with me because I'm like, oh, this is my time to start collecting signatures. And so this was the first Bailey had heard of the whole coming from Illinois thing. She read it and she's like, really? And I said, yeah, I did. I did come from Illinois. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. And she signed it. She and I took a picture together. And then she said, we got to get a picture on my phone. And I'm like, excuse me? And she's like, yeah, like, this is awesome. We got to get a picture. So Nick puts my camera down after taking the picture, and Bailey just whips her phone out and, brings up the camera function, gives it to Nick. She's like, would you mind taking a picture on my phone? And he's like, sure. Just going to let these crazy girls do their thing. So she's like, we got to hold up the sign. So we're both holding it up. And just to clarify, the sign it's a black sign with yellow lettering that says, I came from Illinois to see NXT. And so we hold the sign up, and Nick takes the picture on her phone, and then hands it back to her. And she thanked him, and she was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to put this on Twitter later." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like leaning over, like closer, trying to comprehend what's happening. And she goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna tweet this." And I go, "Not really." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna tweet this." And I'm like, wow. Well, and one of our friends, Chris, had said, of course, I'm hearing this from all you guys. Oh, if you meet so-and-so, you have to ask them this. If you meet so-and-so, you have to hug them. If you meet so-and-so, you have to tell them I said this. And, of course, I'm not remembering any of this. Yeah. But one thing I actually remembered was our friend Chris saying, if you meet Enzo, you have to ask him about the secret handshake. And I'm like, okay, I thought about it outside, but I'm like, I'm not stopping him and asking him about a secret handshake, especially since him and Cass and Aiden are freaking out about getting inside. And Aiden thinks he just completely shattered me and destroyed all of my existence. And so I'm like, oh, this would be a good time to actually ask him about that, because it's a meet and greet and you're allowed to actually kind of talk to them and collect your little autographs and stuff. And they were like freaking out about the sign too. And it's so funny because they're so different. Colin Cassidy is like shy and quiet and like really like reserved, And Enzo is so, like, boisterous and loud.
Well, if I recall, he has a microphone tattooed on his hand. So
he borders on obnoxious. Kind of like I do when I'm excited. But he was so nice, too. Like, he was so personable. Like, you felt like you knew him.
Yeah.
You know? And I just come up, and, you know, they're looking at the sign, and Enzo goes, "No way."
I just imagine him saying...
Yeah. And they're signing, or Colin is signing it this time, and he goes, "So you really came from Illinois?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm probably doing a terrible job impersonating him, but I'm like, "Yeah." And he asked if we were on, you know, if we actually literally just came down to see NXT, or if we were, you know. And I said, "Well, we're vacationing," but I said this was the make or break, which is the truth.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have chosen to go to Florida if, you know, NXT wasn't down there. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, you got to make it a priority. You got to go to NXT."
Can't be soft.
He was very, very earnestly said, you know, "Well, I really appreciate your support. You know, there's not very many people who would do something like this." And he said, "This blows my mind, and I really appreciate your support." And I'm like cry. I'm like welling up, and I'm like, "Thank you." And I'm like, "Stop crying. I've cried so many times already," you know. But and I'm like, okay, so I need to change. I'm thinking I need to change the subject now, or I'm just gonna end up. I'm gonna be a mess. So I'm like, "All right, Enzo." I said, "I heard you have a secret handshake," and he looks at me like, "Yeah? How you know about that?" And he's like accusing, like I'm angry with you almost, and I'm like, I put my hands up in defense, and I'm like, I just have a friend, and he's like on social media and the internet a lot, and he said, I said, "This is all I know." He said, "I have to ask you about your secret handshake if I met you." And he looks at me again. He's all defensive, and he's like, "Well, it's a secret." And again, I throw my hands up, and I'm like, "Okay, I just told him I'd ask you." And he smiles and goes, "All right, I'll show you." And so he did, and it was funny. I wish I could like really remember it now, but it was quite elaborate. And I just had this huge stupid smile on my face the whole time because I'm like, this is so cool.
You're one of the few who know or learn the handshake. Even if you don't remember it, you're one of the...
I remember a very little bit of it, but he's like, "First you do this, and then you not like that. You gotta do this." And I'm like, "Okay, sorry." I felt like I was a certified G after that.
But you can't teach that.
Yeah, can't teach that. And then, okay, so night 2 at NXT, it was, and Schlappy was kind of asking earlier, a lot of the, like, basically the same people were there, but they kind of did mix up the matches a little bit, but fortunately I was able to see Adrian Neville and Sami Zayn wrestle each other 2 nights in a row. And I was also able to see referee Jason Ayers' very last NXT show, which was night 1 actually. So now we're backtracking a little bit. But Jason Ayers was a Dreamwave referee, so I knew him from way back then. And he actually approached me before the show on the first day. And in all my infinite wisdom, I said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And he said, "Yeah, of course I remember you." And to me, I'm just like, I don't know, if I went off somewhere and did something for a long time, I wouldn't remember me. But he said, "Yeah, of course I remember you." He said, "That's why I came over to say hi." Well, it turned out that was his last night reffing for NXT. And at the end of the night, Sami Zayn really kind of put him over on the mic and, you know, expressed their appreciation for all of his, you know, just never-ending hard work and dedication.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
First one to get there, last one to leave. And, you know, I took some pictures of him kind of celebrating and, you know, saying his goodbyes because the locker room kind of emptied out. And so that was really cool to get to do that and to get a picture with him after the show.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of like coming full circle. Because now he's off to be a WWE ref.
I was just about to say that. It's just so weird. It's like fate-ish or like destiny.
Yeah,
it's like, what are the odds the one time you go for a weekend to NXT and it happens to be the last night of a referee you knew before from an indie show? That's crazy.
It was completely insane.
I can't,
yeah. And also to see Kalisto, because he is one who I also, you know, got to know in Dreamwave and Galley Lucha Libre up in Chicago, and a couple of other promotions too, but he was Samurai Del Sol then, and he's one that I actually he was at my wedding. I have pictures of me and him at my wedding, and we used to talk on the phone and stuff. We would text, so it's kind of crazy that Kalisto is like such a big deal now too, because to me he was just someone I knew. Yeah. You know? Mm-hmm. So it was really fantastic to see him again, too. It was fun. It was kind of like a tiny little reunion.
Yeah.
You know? Show 1 was definitely a lot better overall, just as far as the building, the fans, the way everybody conducted themselves, and just the setup provided for a better opportunity to, you know, get to meet people and stuff. Yeah. I wish there was a way to go again, because now, like, watching it on the network is just, like, after you go, it's just really... It kind of hurts not to be there. But I'm really, really glad I got the opportunity to even go, because that's more than most people get to do. So I'm really thankful.
I don't usually use language like this, but you all should know that you people stink.
I've been thinking, and I'm curious to see what you guys come up with or what you think of my ideas here. This year, we've already had a number of NXT superstars and divas called up to the main roster. So about a week ago, I was thinking of what are some other ways that some current NXT guys and gals could make their appearances on the main roster. First of all, the first one I was thinking of, perfect, and I may have said something about this before, but Bayley, I think, since her character was kind of that, still kind of is that, she's kind of a fangirl, you know? And I think... Instead of just, you know, showing videos like, Bayley's coming, because people wouldn't really care about that.
Right.
Or having her just come in and win a match or whatever. I think for like a month, she should just appear backstage. Like, almost like she's an NXT diva, which she is, who is just backstage, because people know they're already back there anyways for a lot of time. Just show it, and have her do backstage segments with legends or even just current roster people. That would just be really funny, her basically... Just marking out because she's getting the chance to meet, like, even Bo just walks by and she's like, Bo Dallas or something, like anybody, and like, oh my God, it's Paige, or like Bret Hart.
Hey, little buddy.
Yeah, I just think that would be a good way to introduce her. Do that for like a month or two or something, and then have her wrestle eventually. Even have it be like one of the divas is, she's just like hugging them all the time, and they're just like, they're getting fed up with it, and they're like, you know what? Why don't we have a match or whatever? So then.
So almost a little bit like a Mickey James Trish Stratus thing on a smaller
but more
level.
Like
hopefully it's not quite that far.
Yeah. But she's just like obsessed with all these not one person in particular, just the whole thing. And then when she goes out there by that time, I think people will care about her, you know, and want to see her. And I think it's not too far off for these guys. The Ascension.
I
was thinking like they're going to be here soon, but I wonder how they're going to do it. I think no videos. No nothing. Complete surprise. Show up. Imagine, I don't know, we'll say the Usos just won a big match or something. And afterwards, the lights just go out. And everyone's like, what? Their music hits, and the Ascension just appears on the stage. Their strobes are going. Like, you know how their entrance is so cool on NXT. Imagine that on a grand stage. There's two things that could happen. One, they just literally walk out on the stage and stand there, and that's it. Like, you're like, who are these guys? They're just badasses.
Except a lot of people will know.
Yeah, most would know. But for the people who don't.
Right.
Or they just go out there, do that same thing.
Well, you all know Michael Cole's going to be like, who are these guys? What is happening?
No, he's probably just not going to care.
Actually, no, he probably would say they're the NXT guys. Because he tends to.
Ascension.
Yeah, he tends to usually put over the NXT guys.
Yeah, when the Shield debuted, he did that.
Yeah. And you would think JBL would be, since he's the general manager.
You would think
so I think the Ascension...
He wouldn't be able to do it right, though.
No, he'd be like, oh, Maggle, it's the Ascension! But, so what do you think about when the Ascension comes up? Do you think it should be a surprise completely, or do you think there should... Because, there probably could be some badass vignettes for them.
Yeah.
But I think for them, I think it'd just be great, a surprise. Yeah. Their music hits or whatever, and you're just like, oh my God, it's happening! So another one was Sami Zayn, because you know he's going to go up, but how the hell is he going to just show up? Because, frankly, he doesn't really have a gimmick. He's just really good wrestler and a guy who's just, a cool guy.
Yeah.
How do you really bring that up?
But that can happen. CM Punk was just a really cool guy.
That's true, yeah.
When he showed up.
And kind of like Daniel Bryan, too. He's just a wrestler, like, you know. So I was thinking... Wait, go ahead.
Hold on.
I don't know.
What if we put a mask on? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know
He's
what
never
your
done that
I don't know
before.
what your idea would have
Okay,
been.
let's see what you
but
got.
I was thinking like he could be like just like in the Adam Rose like mix.
One of
You
the
could-
Rosebuds or something?
Yeah. Because, you know, like, he dances because he has that ska
Yeah,
song now.
yeah.
So, like, you just see him dancing a couple times in back. And then all of a sudden, like, through talking segments with Adam Rose, you find out who he is. And then he wrestles eventually.
Yeah, that's interesting. They definitely could use the Rosebud thing as a way to get somebody on TV easily. Basically, what I was saying is, and they haven't done something like this, they should do like a match where the winner of a battle royal or a ladder match or a tournament or something gets a contract. They win, they get a contract to face anyone on the main roster. They get to pick, if they win that match, they get to stay on the main roster. So it really makes it a big deal. They could hype that on Raw and SmackDown, like, someone's going to get a shot to come here. Well, let's say Sami Zayn wins it, and he gets to choose anyone he wants, and he chooses Cesaro, because they've already got the history and stuff.
Snap.
You know what I mean?
And that would have people so behind him.
So he chooses Cesaro, and Cesaro doesn't want to do it, but he can't not, because Sami Zayn won the shot. They do it at a pay-per-view, whatever the next pay-per-view is at the time.
They can even do that on, like, maybe Raw or something.
Yeah, they could. I just think it would be really cool to do it at...
It would.
On a
It would.
pay-per-view.
And then...
Even to, like, be early in the show.
Yeah. And then Sammy
opening
ends up
match or
winning, because,
something.
to my knowledge, Sammy hasn't beat Cesaro in their, you know, their...
Well, and if Cesaro, and this is no disrespect intended, but if Cesaro can lose to Kofi, and I love Kofi,
Yeah.
but if he can lose to Kofi, he can lose to
Sami Zayn.
Zayn
Definitely.
in his debut to
Yeah.
put him over.
Yeah.
You know,
Except
and I'm not
Sami
saying
Zayn's
Cesaro
gonna
wouldn't.
get killed after the
Cesaro,
match.
I think, really, they have so much respect for each other.
Yes.
And they go way back to the
Yeah.
indie days. Both of them do. In ROH and even before that. So I could see that happening, and it wouldn't hurt Cesaro's credibility because he's randomly lost to Kofi and others, you know. So, and any match him and Sami Zayn have had, it's not like he just crushes him.
No, they're great back and forth, and
so
just match of the years every time. Because think how that is good in all ways. One, puts Sami Zayn automatically in a rivalry. Two, he gets to show off his wrestling skills, and people will already be behind him.
Yep.
And three, I mean, it makes him look good
and
getting a
he's
win
really
on a
one
pay-per-view.
that they are going to have to bring in the right way.
Yeah, that's why I was really thinking, because they can't just be like, here comes Sami Zayn, he dances, and he's a good wrestler. But
And people like him, and people say Olay.
So put him right in a thing with that, and he'd look great.
Start him in the story.
And imagine the build-up they could do for that. Say a month in advance, they know that he's going to fight Cesaro. Show their matches before. Show highlights from their matches and be like, this is going to be an
heck, put together like a little special.
Yeah.
A half-hour special on the network showing their match of the year.
Yeah.
Or the one on Arrival.
I think that is just, that's how I would do it.
Another idea I kind of had, we talked a lot about brand, like having brand extension, and with that would be a draft. And how, like, a lot of other sports do. I know it's sports entertainment and stuff.
Yeah.
But they, like, for baseball, for instance, you get drafted, you go down to, like, minor league, which would be NXT, and then you work your way up. But if they had the draft, then they could be like, oh, we're going to draft people from NXT to come up to SmackDown or Raw.
That would be very
And then it
good.
gets people interested in NXT, and then it's like, who's coming up? Who's coming up? And then it's like a big ordeal when their music
That
hits.
would be awesome.
Have like, because you know how WWE is all about having special guests on, like celebrities on Raw. And have Seth Rogen come out.
I was gonna say, don't you dare say Seth Rogen.
Oh my
I'm
God.
so tired of that.
And then have him be like, well, here's a guy who everyone says looks like me, but I don't see it. And then he comes out and...
Just to go off your idea, wouldn't it be so funny? They're like, next week, special guest Seth Rogen, and just Sami Zayn comes out.
Come on, guys.
You're listening to Ringside Radio, brought to you by DDP Yoga. We are in no way, shape, or form sponsored by DDP Yoga, but you should check it out. I've heard that shit is intense.
Right now, the WWE World Heavyweight title, I should say, is one. You know, there's two belts for one title, and we often talk about how, why do they have two belts for one title, which we usually start talking about the brand extension and how, you know, it made things interesting. So my question is, first of all, did you like the brand extension when it was in effect?
Yes.
Yes?
After a while, I was like, You know, it was, I could take it or leave it, but now I'm like, gosh, I wish it was back, because, like, I remember when and to me, Triple H was synonymous with Raw.
Mm-hmm.
I thought of Raw, I thought of Triple H. The color red made me think of Triple H because of Raw, you know? And SmackDown, I thought of The Undertaker, and I thought of John Cena.
Yeah.
Because they were just... And Cena was like the mid-card up-and-comer at that time. Mm-hmm. But I just... Yeah, Yes. I would get excited based on what was happening. Like, I would... This is sad, and I don't care. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I would wear my red wristband on Monday and my blue one on Friday because, like, that's how much I identified with, you know, this is what I'm going to see Monday night on Raw, you know, and Friday night on SmackDown. So, yeah, I think after a couple years it kind of became monotonous.
And partly...
But, like, they would do the draft and freshen things up and, yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I do really wish it was back.
Yeah.
And one thing I really liked about it is how, like, October's pay-per-view would just be SmackDown. And then, the only ones that they shared were the Big Four. And it just seemed like the stories were a lot better because they had more time to build them up. They just seemed more personal and you got behind the wrestlers more because of it.
If it's a Raw pay-per-view, the SmackDown guys are still over here doing their rivalries. They're just extending them.
They've got more time.
Or they're just kind of leveling off before they start building for their pay-per-view, which is still a month away.
Yeah. So basically, the brand extension started in 2002 because the main reason they did it was because they got so many people after buying WCW and ECW and stuff. So it was a perfect... If they wouldn't have done that, I don't think they would have survived, or they would have lost. They would have had to fire so many people.
As someone who played sports in high school and stuff, I realize how much they go through. Wrestlers, they don't really. They have maybe 3 days of a break. Two.
Yeah, basically 2.
And basically a lot of times one of those is media appearances.
Yeah.
2 days, and they're working out on the days off. They're doing appearances, so they don't really have hardly any time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just to relax, you know. So I think that having separate shows, you know, would allow that to happen. You know, I don't have to be at SmackDown every week to make a good show. You know, I can relax. I don't have to worry about quote unquote putting my neck on the line every time.
Right.
Do you think the brand extension should come back now? Not saying it's going to, because it's not. I think they're far away from brand extension. But what are the pros? Like, do you think the brand extension should come back right now?
Yes. You get mid-card guys more of an opportunity.
And low-card, honestly. You would the stories would actually make, be worth something.
Maybe they do. Maybe they have the SmackDown brand partner main event with the SmackDown brand and partner Superstars with the Raw brand and make Superstars a bigger deal than it is.
Yes, and it definitely would.
You know, you could tape Superstars before you go on live for Raw and then do main event live and then tape SmackDown with the SmackDown brand.
Yeah, get Zack Ryder on TV.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
for heaven's sake.
Those guys would be able to have matches that actually mattered.
Yeah.
So
do something.
I would say yes, the brand extension should come back, but I think they would need to bring up some NXT guys to fill out the roster more because they have the roster's big, but they actually need it to be big.
Though.
Yes, it is. It's definitely good.
That's good.
Bring up, I don't know, 5 to 10 people, and I think they could easily split the roster.
Well,
down.
and they've got guys that they're waiting to bring on NXT TV that they've signed deals with that aren't on TV.
And that gives them their opportunity.
It's only in the past few months that we've seen Kalisto at all. And he's been signed for quite some time.
And they're always signing new people.
Yeah,
too.
and
they just signed 3 more guys in the past week and a half.
Well,
how
and
Raw and SmackDown could be split
how many
up now.
tag teams did they have then?
Oh, so many.
Oh my gosh.
Because they had
we've
2
complained
separate
back
belts.
and forth about this, but they had a tag team division on Raw, and they had a tag team division on SmackDown.
And they had enough for it to be interesting.
Yes. It was relevant. It wasn't like Luke Harper versus the Usos for the
Round
18th
7,
time in a row.
which is great, but
Luke Harper
back
and
then,
Eric Rowan. Sorry,
back then they would take just 2 guys who weren't doing anything, stick them in a tag team.
He always gets forgotten.
He's gonna come out me down with his sheep mask now.
Wait, what'd you say now?
Because I said Luke Harper versus the Usos, and then I was like, Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. Sorry, Eric Rowan.
Well, that's why he's always frowning on that photo of the three of them.
Sad,
he's in the back. He's like,
oh my God.
Come on, guys. I know I'm not as good, but
I'm the forgotten
it's just my crack sweat, isn't it?
It's all about the money. It's all about the money.
What championships would go where? How would you go about that?
Put the U.S. title on SmackDown, Intercontinental on Raw, and then 2 tag titles. Or, they need 2 tag titles.
Going on sorry.
And they could do what we've always talked about, having 2 different Divas titles, a Divas division and a Women's division.
Or they could do the tag team titles on one brand and the Women's division and actually make it a legitimate Women's division on the other brand.
And if you remember, Raw had the Women's title, and SmackDown had the Cruiserweight title.
Yeah.
They had women on SmackDown, but they were basically just there for, your cat fights and stuff.
Yep.
And Raw, they were fighting for the women's title.
down-to-business stuff. Yeah.
So, I think that would be fine. They could easily
do the Total Divas somewhere.
On, I guess, SmackDown, one of the shows, and use the women's title, I say women's, not divas, for people like Paige and AJ, Emma, Paige, all the people who...
Bailey.
are worth it. Yes.
When she gets there.
All right. I have kind of many ideas here.
Okay.
The first is just have a women's title on either SmackDown or Raw, and then actually have the Divas wrestle on Total Divas, so we don't have to waste our time on actual WWE programming.
Well,
you mean, just the Total Divas.
Yeah, the Total Divas. Yeah.
I was gonna say I'm not watching Total Divas to watch Paige and AJ.
No. I'm talking about Nikki Bella and all of them actually wrestle on
and give them a Total Divas title.
You can just get random people on the street to fill
that's what it's for. They
can have the stupid butterfly.
It makes me sick when I see AJ or Paige with that butterfly. It's like, come on.
Yeah. And then my other idea is Raw should go back to 2 hours.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Agreed.
I love wrestling more than the next guy or gal, but by the 2.5 hour mark, I am falling out of my chair. I'm dying.
What you say about the 3 hour thing, that's very true. If they did a brand extension, they would have to make Raw 2 hours, or else that makes SmackDown look terrible. You know what I mean? Because the idea is they're competing brands.
Yeah.
They're 2 different shows. Back in the day, they went out of their way to make them 2 different shows. They put the Raw announce team up by the stage.
Yep.
The stages were completely different.
And the sets were so different.
Yes, everything about it was different.
The commentators would put it over. Yeah. They'd call Raw the flagship broadcast.
I love that how it was like a competition. But back to the title thing. With the titles we have now, there's really not that many. Back then there were a lot. There were basically 4 on each show. So what do you think would be on Raw, should be on Raw, and what should be on SmackDown? And more importantly, do you think the Cruiserweight title should come back?
I would be all for the Cruiserweight title because, we've said before, we've made a list numerous times of all the Cruiserweights, and there's a lot of them, and they're just signing more and more, and there's so many people who could do it, and it would just give people like Kofi, Jessica Gabriel, Tyson Kidd, and people like that something to do.
Yeah.
And it was always a good mid-card. It was always a good opening match, and they were always good. It was some of the best matches. It's just nowadays when I think about it, I love the Cruiserweight title and I love the Cruiserweight matches, but sometimes I see it as like a double-edged sword. It's what if you've got
that's what I was thinking too.
Who they're just the cruiser. If you're in the Cruiserweight division, I don't think they would do this with. We'll use Adrian Neville for example. We know how freaking good he is. Imagine if he goes in there and they have the Cruiserweight title. Of course, he's going to be fighting in the Cruiserweight matches. And maybe the tag team division, if he's lucky. But how the hell is he going to get a shot at the World Heavyweight title?
That title might as well say not championship material.
Yeah.
And I love the Cruiserweights, but they run the risk of being pigeonholed there. I almost think the Cruiserweight title might as well say not WWE championship material.
You will not
material.
be the world champion.
Yep.
But here's something for
because
you to fight over.
The U.S. and Intercontinental titles, you win that, you're you're on your way.
Yeah.
You're probably going to get there. Most of the ones who win the Intercontinental title are going to win. Yeah. But if you see someone win the Cruiserweight title, they're a great wrestler and they can do great things, but they're not going to win the big one.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say...
to answer the question, I would be against it. Because I don't like what it does to people. I love watching the matches, but you can have those matches without a title.
Yeah.
You can have a solid lower and mid card without having a title.
That's basically.
I say no. I don't want to see the cruiserweight title back.
For me, I'd rather see. This is another title that's basically like you're not gonna really do much, but the hardcore title.
Yes.
Because you have a lot of lower card guys where you can just pick out names and you know that they're not gonna be the WWE champion. Like they might.
But anybody can hold that hardcore title.
Yeah, so. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They might be the U.S. champ. They might be Intercontinental maybe. But it just brings a lot of enjoyment because you can see it on Raw, you can see it on SmackDown. It could be a mixture, and you can see them any random place just go and lose it, and it leads to a lot of cool backstage moments where they're getting hit by God knows what.
Something that we've all talked about before. It's like doing it like with the hardcore title, but have it called like the Internet Championship, where you can win it
or
anywhere, like
the WWE Network champion. And I think that instead of the hardcore title, it would basically be the hardcore title, but nowadays hardcore.
Like the same rules, like it could be defended
that would
anywhere.
It could be shown on YouTube. It could be shown on the network. It could be shown on WWE.com. It could be shown on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. They want people to tune into that. Imagine they have this title, and anyone can win it. Like, catering guy could have just penned
like trips and falls on a guy,
well, and you remember seeing like someone sneaking into someone's hotel room and winning, and the refs going, "What?"
It's so entertaining.
And they're the
hardcore champion. So basically your idea right there. And they could still use weapons and stuff. I just think nowadays they wouldn't call it the hardcore champion. Yeah. Divas could win it. Yeah. And it not even matter. I think that would be awesome.
Emma.
Yeah. I am completely all for that. Out of everything we've ever talked about, that's one of the things.
Creative, are you listening?
That's one of the things I think would be the best for fans and for them.
Well, and that could be, that wouldn't even be a, if we had the brand extension, that wouldn't even be a brand specific thing.
No, that could just be anybody.
It would just be all over
So that's
the
a little
place.
different from the brand extension, but I think I'd rather at this point have that happen more than the brand extension. I just think the brand extension is such a great
we're at now,
topic.
I would love to see the brand extension come back, but it's not going to because they have the titles unified.
Yeah, they're doing everything to go away from the brand extension.
And I'm completely okay with it because it's a different era, it's a different time, that things are different now.
Triple H is... Just from listening to some of his interviews and stuff online, he wants it to be more of the old school kind of thing. One champion. And there is the possibility of the United States and Intercontinental Championships being unified. I mean, it could happen Sunday. It really could.
So,
that's true.
So, what do you guys think about that?
All right. So, they have one belt for the whole thing right now for WWE champion.
Like one world championship? Yeah. Well, no,
there's two physical titles.
But it's one title.
It's one championship.
First off, just make a whole new one title belt. Yeah. Because it's, I don't know, tacky looking or it's just bad looking.
Why would someone carry overkill belts? I understand when that first happened, but after WrestleMania, they really should have.
I gotta say, I'm really biased, but Cena's worn it about the best way anybody has.
He has.
Because he just wears it around his neck.
But even then,
it's obnoxious.
He's worn it the best way, but it's still awful.
I imagine he's probably like, how the hell am I going to do this? All right, this works.
And they have to carry that crap through the airport and through, like, my gosh.
So
can you imagine?
Just make one title belt, and I'd actually be okay with the U.S. and Intercontinental being one thing. Just make it one belt and not two. Oh, okay, I'm holding two titles.
What would they call it, though? The Intercontinental.
They could just call it the Intercontinental.
United States.
If you think about it, they could just call it the Intercontinental Championship.
Just get rid of the U.S. Championship.
Okay, but...
Intercontinent. So, that includes the United States.
Yeah. So... I really like the U.S. title, even though it doesn't mean anything right now, per se.
When has it...
Exactly.
When's the last time it's meant something?
It doesn't really... And this would make it mean something, but then think about it. We only have 4 titles on the shows.
During the brand extension,
wouldn't that be kind of weird?
It's the last time it really meant something.
Wouldn't that be kind of weird if we just had 4 titles?
I don't actually think so, because I think it would make them mean so much more. Like, you have just the Intercontinental Championship, and it means so much more to hold that belt, and so it would bring relevance.
It definitely would bring relevance, because with there's only being 2 singles championship, minus the Divas, if that were to happen.
Right.
If you're not the guy, then you're the other guy.
You're the other guy.
And if you're not the other guy...
really, that's how indie promotions run.
Yeah.
They have their main title, they have their slightly lower title. A lot of times they have tag titles, and they might have a women's title. So to me, that's really all you need.
That's true. Really, it's like the other title really only mattered for the brand extension because it was the U.S. was on par with the Intercontinental back then. I'm definitely not going to be upset if it gets unified. Yeah. It's just, it'll be very weird and different because they use titles as something to fight over. Because they don't come up with a lot of storylines like they used to.
That's what the titles are meant for, but they do need to not just base rivalries around a title.
I agree.
So if you have less titles, then it leads
to
better stories. Because they'll have to come up with something, or they can't just be like,
well, we got 4 matches tonight on the card.
Yeah. Congratulations, Daniel, on a hard-fought victory.
So it is time for Random Superstar. Here we go. And the number is 15. Who's it going to be? Drum roll, please. I'm afraid I've got some bad news. It's Bad News Barrett. Or Wade Barrett. Stu Sanders or whatever the hell you want to Wade Barrett. Sweet.
He looks better with a beard.
Okay, I definitely agree with that.
I think we can all agree there that he needs to keep the beard.
He looks kind of creepy without.
Yeah.
He just looks
his
like a
face
weird,
is also lopsided.
Yeah,
but with the beard,
almost like Jack Swag.
Yeah,
no, his is melting.
His isn't melting. I used to hate Wade.
Yeah,
Barrett.
we know. I know.
Stupid.
Sorry, not to cut you off here, but we know.
Yeah,
we couldn't understand why.
With like a passion. Well, it was because he didn't have a beard and his face looked weird. Also,
and you talk about me being shallow-minded.
Yeah. Well, and I just didn't really care for his character at all. I didn't really like anyone from England either. So
Wow.
So he's not racist. He's like a nationalityist. He's countryist.
But
it was just like his gimmick was boring. I thought he didn't really have any major storylines or anything. What won me over was the bad news gimmick. I thought it was really funny when he came out and with the gavel or whatever and had his little yeah, because they can't afford a little wooden stick, to hit it down.
Vince lost a lot of money. Okay,
you're cutting this.
That gavel's.
You're keeping you're taking this.
It's like $10 at Walmart, Vince. Come on, man.
You buy it then.
I will. I liked that gimmick a lot. I thought it was funny, and
that is good.
It got me to like him. Also, he was fighting RVD, and I don't like RVD very much. So.
I think he beats up the guy I don't like, so he's good.
Yeah, basically.
I think Barrett's one of the best wrestlers on the roster right now.
No, I wouldn't go that. I'm just kidding.
And he is definitely a future world champion if he just quits getting injured when they push him.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing about him is like it seems like every time he's about to go on with the big one, he gets hurt or something happens and screws him out of it. And when like what Frankie was saying when the Bad News Barrett thing, like how that's what sold him on him. When he first started doing that, I hated it. Like I just kept wanting him to go back to Wade Barrett. Don't fix what wasn't broken, but this Bad News Barrett thing is really it's awesome. Like they definitely need to keep it. I would be a little upset if they just had him go back to like the bare knuckle brawler.
I really this summer I've really been watching the old FCW episodes on YouTube, and he, as you referenced earlier, Grimm, he was Stu Sanders there, and Wade Barrett, and like 50 other names. Not really though, but he, to me, watching him in FCW, he's one of the most entertaining ones there. So you can kind of see that he's a standout. He was a standout even from his earliest days of wrestling or being under a contract to WWE. And the way he came in to WWE was very unique. And, with the Nexus, and he was the leader. So he was kind of the thoroughbred of the group. I think they put the most faith in him. And so I think he was kind of destined to do well. I think they really wanted him to go places. And I think he's really kind of found his place now more than ever before with the Bad News Barrett gimmick. So I've always appreciated his work, and I do think he's really entertaining, and I think he's enjoying what he's doing right now. I think he really likes the Bad News Barrett thing.
Maybe not particularly what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
He's kind of on an injury, but I get what you're saying.
Right, but when, you can kind of tell when someone is really into what they're doing, and you can tell he just really enjoys it. So
he likes being the bearer of bad news.
I'm glad that he's found his place, and I'm glad that he is in a position where people can really appreciate his talent and his ability, because I do think he definitely has yet to reach his potential. I think he's got future champion written all over him. I really do.
And I'm looking forward to the day he becomes Good News Barrett. I think that'll be a lot of laughs.
Yeah, when I guess got back into wrestling, it was like beginning of 2012 or whatever, so I kind of missed the whole Nexus thing, which was basically he was the
I am sorry for your loss.
He was the main driving force, he was the guy. And when I came in, it was right before his injury that took him out for half a year or whatever. And he was doing the Barrett Barrage thing or whatever, and I just thought, he didn't even have a beard at the time. But I thought he was just awesome. I liked his wrestling style. I thought he was just a badass. I don't know. So then when I heard he got injured, I was just really very disappointed. And during the time while he was gone, I caught up and watched a lot of his stuff and really got into him. And I remember texting Katrina a lot, specifically on Raws, when there was a chance he might return. I'd be like, oh my gosh, Wade Barrett could return tonight. And then when he finally did, just freaking out so much. He didn't do a whole lot right when he returned, but he got a few more Intercontinental titles under his belt. And he actually he's now a 4-time Intercontinental champion, which is pretty good. But I think he definitely will be a future world champ. And basically, like you guys have said, I'm just echoing what you said. He's a guy who just has bad luck. Right when he's so close to getting something, because I think
Bad luck
Barrett. Yeah, he's getting the bad news to him. He was so close to a world heavyweight title. I think he really was in 2012. And this year, I think he was going to win the Money in the Bank. Yeah. But right before, another injury. So I hope when he gets back, he can get what he deserves. A world title run. Because he deserves it. And the gimmick he's got right now, basically like you said, when he changed to the bad news thing, I was not fully into it. I was like, why is he not wrestling? That was my main thing. It wasn't that it was like even a bad, it's not a bad gimmick. It's just, why is he not wrestling? I don't know, I still don't know why he wasn't. It could have been...
Well, because he was wrestling house shows.
It could have been their idea to keep him off, and it makes people like him more when he comes back. And if that happened, it worked perfectly. Because the pop he got when he returned the night after WrestleMania to in-ring action was phenomenal. And since the day after WrestleMania, I've liked him even more.
Yep, same here.
And he's one of my favorites, so I can't wait for him to return. I think he's still got a lot left to do in his career. Yep. Okay, so here's some wrestling jokes. Hope you guys enjoy this. How does Mick Foley save so much money on groceries?
How's that?
I doubt that he does. Look at him.
He always goes for the cheap pop.
Oh, gosh.
Your brain's going to want to go somewhere, but it's not where you think it is. Why isn't Chris Benoit allowed near gas stations? The answer is not because he might kill somebody. Because he always carries matches. Get it?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Okay, here's one. How does Big Show order his steak? Well... Get it? Like... Okay.
I was going to say he just gets the whole cow.
What's Daniel Bryan's favorite day?
Yesterday. Oh, high five.
Okay, what's his least favorite month?
November.
Yep. Okay, here's another
Good thing
one.
his birthday's not in November. That would be sad.
Zack Ryder. That was the That's what it is.
Oh, poor guy.
Oh, this is good. Why was Ultimate Warrior fired from the pet shop? He couldn't sell pedigree. WrestleMania. One of those WrestleManias.
12?
Yeah. Yes,
or
probably.
11?
How many Vince McMahons does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. Light bulb screwed light bulb. What is Triple H's favorite scientific element? Barium.
Wow.
Oh no, that's terrible.
Okay, why does Zeb Coulter make Jack Swagger wear wrestling boots? Because he hates sneakers.
No.
What did CM Punk tell Adam Copeland when he tried to feel him up? I'm straight, Edge.
Oh, wow.
All I have to say is our partner is going to shock the world because he is none other than the Shock Master! All right. The Shock Master! I told you. Oh, God.
Well, everybody, thank you for watching this episode of Ringside. Hope you enjoyed some of Katrina's stories about NXT and some of our good old wrestling talk. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for Frank the Tank for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, it was a blast. Always good to have you. So, yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.